What happened after you answered an ex's call or text? We actively tried to be friends for quite some time. I set firm boundaries that I didn't want to hear about her love life, I wouldn't share mine, and that was it. Then the next several conversations were about her success on Tinder. She was easy and a giant melon, so go figure. And then her asking me how to seduce one specific guy that I joked about for a good portion of our relationship was my replacement. I half laughed and said, I'm shocked you didn't go to him first. We hooked up a few times before, but not recently. I want to reach out to him again. I sat there on FaceTime. She could tell I was doing math. Then she tried to change the subject, but I cut her off. Wait, you met while we were dating. You haven't hooked up recently. I knew it. He wasn't the one I got chlamydia from, so don't blame him. You had chlamydia? I went radio silent, completely blocked her. About 3 years passed, and she called me from a number I didn't recognize. First, she apologized for a lengthy #MeToo post about me, but people were blaming her for how we ended, and she wanted to reclaim her power by lying about me on the internet. Then she asked me if I thought about her at all. I said, sure, in therapy. And once in a while, I look for your friends and Oh, and I still can't smell drinks. Brunettes still make me flinch. Loud voices make me flinch. And I can't date anymore because I'm terrified of being alone with women. I'm not paying because of what you did to me happening again, but otherwise, no. She said, word for word, just so you know, I had 4 terminations you didn't know about. All yours. Enjoy bringing that up in therapy too, schmuck. And I have. His therapist must be loving this material. I'm not sure I could handle it. Story 2. Well, I had a boyfriend of almost 3 years who convinced me to move a state away from where I wanted to stay. 5 hours away. But he thought it would be cool to move to another state. It was August when we moved. My mother was moving to that state, so we went with her. He wanted to go back to visit his mom that Thanksgiving, but I asked him to stay with me and wait until Christmas time to go visit his mom because my favorite cousin had just passed away on Thanksgiving. So he stayed through Thanksgiving and left right before Christmas. He was supposed to be gone for a week, and through that time, I never heard from him. But I didn't call him because I didn't want to seem like I was being annoying. On the day he was supposed to come back, his dad called me to let me know he wasn't coming back. He had decided to stay there, and I couldn't talk to him because he was out on a date. I didn't even try to call him after that. I pretended to myself that he had passed away at his trip home. He called me 6 months later, wanted to get back together. I started laughing hysterically. I asked him if he was mentally deficient. He said, what do you mean? I told him, you left me on Christmas, right after me losing my cousin on Thanksgiving, and you think I would take you back? He was actually surprised and sounded bummed and said, oh, I guess you don't need me anymore. My reply, no, I don't. Story 3. She heard a rumor that I ended it all. This was around the time the South Park episode aired where quitting Twitter was an allegory for ending it all. But a friend of mine said to another that I actually did terminate my Twitter account. They thought they meant it allegorically, not literally. So word spread among that particular circle of friends and reached her. We were long separated, but I messed her up. Just spent a year thinking I was gone. One day she feels sentimental, and in a sweet gesture, she sends me a text. Still missing you. I can't imagine how she reacted to my, huh? But she probably believed in ghosts for a minute there. She calls me. We talk. Well, I talk. She screams a bit. We clear the air and figure out how the hell I'm still alive. I felt really sorry for her, like I really wanted to find it hilarious and laugh about it, but she wasn't having any of it. She was legitimately freaking out, and I had to calm her down. She's like that, you know? Not really all there, kind of experiencing life like a fever dream, so moments like this need extreme delicacy and patience. But she manages to ground herself. We caught up a little bit. I assure her that life's going kind of okay for me. Oh, and she made me solemnly promise I would call her if I'm about to pass away, just to confirm the timing works for her. Story 4. I was going to comment on a similar experience. We dated all 4 years in high school. The week before our first semester in college, she came over to my apartment. We were laying down, watching TV in her bed. The idea being we would soon be busy with school and wouldn't have as much time to spend together. Out of nowhere, she started crying. When I asked her what was wrong, all she said was, I don't think you're the one I want to be with. Got up and left. I realized now she had to have been thinking about it for a long time before that. But to me, it was completely unexpected, and I didn't take it well. 4 years later, I hadn't seen or said a word to her in years. All I knew was that her phone number had changed. One day, I was at work and got a text from an unknown number. All it said was, "How did you do this?" I texted back saying they had the wrong number. To my surprise, they replied, "No, I don't. This is Kolonikov, right?" Now intrigued, I began to formulate a reply. Then it hit me. I knew exactly who this was. I replied asking, "So did you get dumped or just lied to?" What soon followed was a CVS receipt long text asking how I got through our breakup, along with a novel detailing how she now understood the pain I went through and admitting what exactly she did to me when we broke up. She apologized profusely and said she didn't deserve to be forgiven and wouldn't ask for me to. Kind of a strange experience. I remember feeling bad for her, but also not. I replied, telling her to take things one day at a time and eventually you'll be surprised with what you can live with. That was 7 years ago. I haven't seen or heard from her since. Story 5. She cheated on me with my best friend and had a baby with him. Then I moved out and we went to court for my son and everything. We had a court order that my son couldn't be around certain people she was living with. She called, asking me to, not in these words, more subtle manipulative ones, even though I had been onto her games for years, break the court order and drive an hour to the house she lived in with people my son can't be around, in the middle of nowhere, in a field, and have dinner with him. This was after she failed to pick my son up for her time with him multiple times, telling me I could keep him for various reasons. Usually her car was broken down. Lie. I had him for 2 months straight before that call. After that, I haven't heard from her and got full custody of my son due to abandonment because she hadn't called, texted, or shown up for over a year and a half. The kid is too young to understand and only knows he can't be around her because she's making bad decisions, which is what DHS told me to tell him. I feel bad for him, of course. As for me, screw her. Glad she's gone. He's better off with me by a long shot. Enjoy your new substance habit. Story 6. Happened years after we had a very nasty mutual breakup, followed by no contact. She wanted to know what my mailing address was, because she had found something that she had in mind while moving that she remembered was of great sentimental value to me, and wanted to make sure it made it back to me. I was appreciative, but not surprised. We were very much not a good match, but she's a good person. I would have done the same if I found something important to her, and I'm sure she knows that about me. We're not friends or anything, and we probably won't speak again, but it takes nothing to be kind and decent to one another, particularly someone you once loved, or even still love, even if you don't want them in your life anymore. Funny how love works, isn't it? Story 7. An ex of mine lost her father suddenly. I got a text from her because she knew I had lost mine about 6 years before we dated. Gave her my condolences, and she said she'd be in town for the funeral and maybe we could meet. When I went to meet up, it wasn't her at all. It was her little sister who was mad and proceeded to tell me how much of a schmuck I was to her sister and her family. If it wasn't for the funeral, no one would have even come back to town or anywhere in this area of the state, because apparently my influence is so vast it covers a large enough area to write off the 7th largest city in America completely. She was under the impression that I cheated on her sister, and that's why we broke up. I told her my side of the story and explained things to her. I didn't cheat on my ex, but she was insecure and always thought I was cheating for no reason. I just got tired of the arguments and accusations. It was long distance, so that didn't help either. Apparently her little sister had just gotten out of a relationship, or her boyfriend thought the same thing of her because she was just living her life. Anyway, we ended up talking to each other after that and hooked up a couple of times. My ex just still thinks that her sister gave me a chewing, and her plan to stand me up by sending her sister to witch me out had worked. Story 8. She called about 6 months after leaving the house and the kids for the guy she was cheating on me with. I'd basically got no contact after she decided to light her entire life on fire and throw me under the bus to care for the kids and the house and bills. She was crying, begging to be taken back. She had moved to another town about an hour away to rebuild her life and explore something new for herself, and was not doing well mentally at all. I still remember her sobbing to me, telling me how sorry she was and that she'll be the best wife ever. I was very doubtful, but believed her. It took weeks of phone calls between us to begin rebuilding trust. About 2 months later, she stuck around for Christmas and the kids, and sat me down to let me know she was feeling confused about her relationship with the other guy and promptly left again. Turns out she had been playing both sides the entire time. I had to tell my kids a second time that she wasn't coming back.
We're getting married in a few months and I've completely cut off contact at this point. Never trust a cheater. I never respect someone who willingly does that with a married woman. Well, that's one way to get a second chance, and then immediately blow it. Story 9. Not me answering, but asking. 15 years ago, dated this guy for a year and a half. It was honestly a great relationship. Plans to move in together, I had a key to his place, etc., etc. Unfortunately, I was undiagnosed BPD at the time, and it really messed the relationship up. It was also the first real healthy relationship I'd had and had no idea how to handle that. The BPD won and he broke up with me. I get it. We didn't talk for a few years. I met my now husband in 2013, got married in 2016, the best relationship I've ever been. And in the course of all this, I realized exactly how terrible I was to my ex. A lot of reflection and self-managing my disorder as well. I found him on FB and sent a message in 2018. I profusely apologized for how I was during our relationship, and I was finally diagnosed after our breakup. I said he didn't do anything to deserve how I treated him. He was a great guy whom I hoped found a great girl. I told him I was married, properly dealing with my disorder and happy. He replied that he accepted my apology. All was good and congratulated me on my marriage. We haven't spoken since, but I'm glad I was able to apologize and face the fact that I was a horrible human being. The last few months of the relationship. Story 10. My ex was in an extremely emotionally and physically cruel relationship prior to me. We dated for 8 years. I helped her pay for therapy, helped her get her life back on track financially and mentally. Woke up lots of nights dealing with panic attacks and anxiety. As she slowly improved, we'd have an argument. If I showed the slightest hint of anger or aggression, she would fall back into that negative state. And what started as healing and genuine trauma became a weapon of manipulation to use against me anytime serious things needed to happen that she didn't like. I put up with it, hoping therapy would work out. Year 7, I started a high-paying job that requires a lot of my time and energy. The bills were paid. She had a brand new car, health insurance through me, and anything she could ever want. I tried my best to make it happen. By the end of year 8, she started the breakup process with me over a phone call out of nowhere. Called a moving truck and took all of her furniture out of our apartment. She told me she felt like I didn't care for her anymore and that it seems like I'm never around. I work a few 24-hour shifts every month, usually leaving around 7:30 to 8 a.m. I'm home most nights by 7 to 8 because of my commute. She works later than me and is home earlier than me. Every single bit of off time I have, I'm dedicated to spending time with her. Suggested dates, planned trips, surprise flowers, home-cooked meals when I could. Never complained about chores. Tried my hardest to keep up the balance of household responsibilities. Over the course of the last 2 years, she's had off and on relationships with bad people. She called me in the middle of the night after 6 months of no contact. She's consumed by anxiety and depression and panicking. She tells me I'm her safe place and that I'm the only one she knows who can calm her down when she can't do it herself. Tell me she needs me to tell her everything will be okay, help her process X bad thing, blah blah blah. I answer this much because the guilt of knowing she's breaking down hurts me inside. She left me and I'm still bitter and angry about it, but I still love her. I know it's just enabling bad behavior. I feel like the biggest piece of trash in the world because she called in a panic 2 weeks ago, but I finally found the courage to tell her that comforting her is a boyfriend privilege she no longer has because she left me. I can't keep ignoring this empty numbness inside. I can't keep sacrificing the ability to move on emotionally, especially because she never reciprocates. It's not fair to me having to deal with her issues and the emotions other men make her feel. It's one-sided. It really messed me up mentally. I chose to live alone. I live a hermit lifestyle, withdrawn from society as much as I can. I quietly do my job, pay my bills and taxes, and then I go home and play the newest game, paint my 4K minis, write D&D adventure modules, cook, sleep, and repeat. Story 11. Nothing. She called because the guy she let knock her up and married, takes 2 to tango, and she knew about birth control because I was a stickler about it, had abandoned her again after their second baby. He abandoned her after the first, convinced her to move halfway across the country to be together, then abandoned her again after baby number 2. She tracked my parents down who gave her my number. Talked with her for hours and hours over a few weeks because Shirley had been my best friend before the LDR thing just didn't work out for her. Missed that part more than anything. Just the closeness, honesty, and connection we always had. She asked me if I would ever consider dating someone with children. I told her the truth, that at 25 I wasn't ready to raise someone else's kids. She got quiet and said she understood. We still keep in touch and chat a couple of times a year. We've even gotten together a couple of times if circumstances brought us close enough to meet in person. There's still a spark. The chemistry and just animal attraction we always had is impossible to ignore. We talked about it, but never acted on it. We're both in a very different place than we were in high school or college. She found love again. Had more kids, lost it, has grandkids, and now seems to be recovering from the loss and dating, etc. again. I've been married almost 30 years with grown kids and looking to retire. Story 12. Oh my lord. It was mid-90s, so no caller ID or anything when you picked up. I was living with my now husband, and ex and I had broken up a few years before. Anyways, I picked up the phone. It was, surprise, ex-boyfriend. I had assumed he still lived in the Midwest. I lived in the PNW. Hadn't talked to him in a couple of years, and I'd moved across the country and on with my life. I just moved to your state. In fact, to your city. I'm taking classes at X college with Y teacher. Let's hang out. He did not know that said teacher is my mother-in-law. I did not tell him. I did not want to hang out. I talked to him for a while. Honestly, I had no real bad feelings towards him. He was just my high school boyfriend, basically. And I had moved on. Ultimately, it was clear he wanted to get back together, and I had to dig deep and just tell him, I'm so sorry. I wish you the best, but I won't be keeping in touch. Best of luck, though. Which was possibly harsh for someone who'd moved thousands of miles to be near me, but it's true. I never fessed up to either my mother-in-law or my ex about my connection between them. He majored in the subject she taught. Plot twist, he married a man with the same name. Same spelling, even. They hyphenated their names. It's been 30-some years. He seems quite happy and has been married almost as long as I have. I've never reached out, but at this point, I would talk to him, and we could probably be actually genuine friends with no drama. He did stay in the area. He did take me in when I was 17, and my dad tried to hurt me. He paid for my plane ticket out to his state from the PNW, and we squatted in a derelict trailer that summer. I felt kind of bad I cut him off so hard back then, but I did feel like he was looking to get back together, and it wouldn't have been good for either of us. Story 13. It had been years after we last saw each other. It's such a toxic relationship, but we held on to each other for the wrong reasons until he finally cheated on me and left me for another woman, who he immediately cheated on as well. I missed a call from an unknown number late one night, but I recognized the area code to be his hometown. He sent a text, and when I confirmed it was him, I got such severe anxiety that it took me about 3 days to have a very short conversation with him that was maybe only about 5 back-and-forth messages long. He wanted to apologize for how he treated me and to tell me he's changed and has started respecting women more now. He also mentioned he sometimes wonders how life would have been if we had stayed together and had kids. He had a pregnancy scare the last time I saw him. What I hated the most is that, while I understood his need to apologize to me, what I really needed was for him to leave me alone. Years of not hearing from him, only to have him bring back all those painful memories to clear his conscience. I hate him even more for it. Story 14. We broke up because after 2.5 years, she would still compare me to her ex-husband. They had been divorced for 7 years by this time. Our relationship was a roller coaster. We broke up in April. In October, her friends came to the nightclub I was working security at just to tell me they had just returned from her wedding. That was so nice of them. Fast forward 5 years, and one night my phone started pinging with updates that she was liking photos of mine on Facebook that I had neglected to make private. I showed the alerts to my then fiancée, now wife. She told me to reach out and see what she wanted, but to keep the phone on speaker. Coming to find out, she was going through a divorce. He had been cheating the entire time using dating apps, and she had just found Tinder on his phone. She wanted to talk and get closure on us. I laughed, told her about her friends visiting me at the nightclub that night and that I had no pity for her, that I was engaged to get married to the girl I met after her and we were closing on her first home. Also that she deserved everything she was getting and hung up on her. That was in the fall of 2016. Haven't heard a peep since, and don't care to. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 15. I got a call from my first ex. Very unexpected, except in that she didn't know my number and sent messages to 3 people that knew me. I have little to no social media, so they asked if I was okay, and I said it's fine. I was curious. Why now? Been like a decade. Caught up a little in our lives. It was a weird throwback feeling. Haven't thought about that part of my life in a while. She was someone I wanted to be with forever back then. It seemed she had it pretty rough. She got married and sounded like an emotionally cruel husband. Recently, he just got fed up and left. Talked for like an hour. Seemed like it went well. She sounded happy to hear I was happily married now and everything. Talked to my wife about it. Said I wanted to make friends because I felt like I messed it up in the past. And we were great friends before we got in a relationship. Just messed up things happened. Wife looked over our texts and I told her everything. She said it was clear she was hitting on me. I didn't think so at the time, but I could see what she meant. I still said I want to try to make friends, but establish boundaries. I texted. She never responded again. Either she just changed her mind, but it did definitely cement more likely that she was hitting on me. Crazy thing is, if it was like 2 or 3 years earlier, I probably would have met with her and potentially got myself into a mess. Story 16. I had just been released from hospital, and this phone number I didn't know kept calling me, but I was still extremely ill and not interested in my phone, so I ignored it for days. After almost a week, they finally texted and said who they were. It was my revolting, cruel, and cheating ex from 2-ish years earlier. I had absolutely no idea how he had gotten my number. I remember specifically that he wrote in the text, "I'm sorry for what you've gone through and what happened to you, but I need you to sign the house paperwork again." I had signed the house over to him the day I moved out. I wanted nothing to do with him or the house, even though I had literally paid all the mortgage and all the bills, etc. He carried on that he would continue calling and texting me until I did it, because the house sale was going through within the next 3 weeks or something. I don't remember the exact details. His lawyer, him, or I don't know, neither of them would admit it, had lost the paperwork that I had signed previously a couple years earlier, and he wanted me to sign it all over again. The house sale was going through for the same price that we had purchased it for. If he didn't get the paperwork signed back, it would fall through and he would lose money in the sale. This is the best part. I hated him at that point, but my sister hated him my entire relationship. So when she found out what was happening, she took the paperwork and said she would look it over. She took 7 weeks to look all over for me. What a shame it took her so long to check everything because the house south through. He ended up selling the house for $30,000 less than we paid for it, and he in total lost about $50,000, including lawyer fees, etc. My sister and I do not like each other. Never have. In fact, we hate each other. It's a lifelong thing because growing up I was always sick and I took Mom's attention away from her and the waste of space other spawn my parents had. Anyway, that was his karma for being such a piece of garbage for the entire relationship. But it nagged me because I couldn't figure out who gave him my number and who told him what happened to me. Then it clicked one day when something else came to light. And it was my cousin who betrayed me. She had hated him my entire relationship as well, but she ran to him to tell him everything that happened to me and gave him my number. Wow. Story 17. I remained friends with my ex-girlfriend. We talked on the phone weekly about stuff, texted most days. When she got a new boyfriend, I was super excited for her. She talked to me all the time about him, and she was so happy. I was excited for her. I thought he was a much better fit for her than I was. They had a lot more in common. I'd spoken to him on the phone a couple times while talking to her. She'd put him on speaker, etc. I was always so normal, and it felt really good about finally having an ex that I could maintain a friendship with. Then a few months after she got a boyfriend, I started dating a girl. At one time, when she called, I mentioned it, and she went silent and made some excuse, then hung up. That was weird, I thought. I never spoke to her again. She blocked me on all socials and blocked my number. That was 16 years ago. I'm married to a new girl now. Haven't spoken to my ex since then. I guess she wasn't as cool as he thought she was. Story 18. This happened to my childhood best friend. He got a text from a random number and it was his high school ex. When we were 26 or 27 when he got the call, their relationship ended because she started acting crazy. He was with his current girlfriend when this happened. He took the call and she listened in. So anyways, his ex tells him about how she's in rehab now and a task she was working on was calling all the people from her past and apologizing for her behavior. My boy is very gracious and tells her that she doesn't have to apologize for the past because they were just kids and they were learning. Love this dude. His ex proceeded to then say that she still needed to apologize again for cheating on him with a couple guys when they were dating, and immediately hung up the phone. My buddy then turned to his girlfriend and said, "I had no idea she ever cheated on me. That witch." His girlfriend then lost it and they both laughed about it for a solid hour. Story 19. I'm not long out of a pretty serious relationship. 5 years, not my longest, but when people talk about the perfect love or however you want to describe it, that's what we had. I guess we both had issues from before the relationship. We never really divulged that, but those things are easy to pick up on. I moved to a different country. due to issues I've had prior to the relationship, and after my time there ended, they insisted I do another stint. Halfway through it, I decided I'd been too depressed without them for too long, and I had put issues in my past that led me to immigrating to bed. Anyway, they broke up with me 2 weeks before I was coming home, and when I got home, I'd found out they'd cheated on a guy they'd worked with and had essentially fallen for. Found out a few months he'd ducked and chucked them and left them very depressed. Anyway, I returned home with a ring to get wed and start a life together and have kids and do all that normal life stuff that neither of us had growing up. The proposal had been long planned. I went ahead with the proposal even though I knew all this, and left them money for a tattoo that they had planned since we got together. I don't know who was to blame, but I'm truly destroyed by this and I don't know what to do with myself. I'm not sure if it's my fault or they've done what all my friends say. My life abroad is perhaps not sustainable, but the idea of going home makes me sick, as they were the only reason I'd had for returning. I've had no contact with them since I last saw them. They got angry at me for knowing about this new guy. A few friends had told me because he ended up running his mouth about them and telling very intimate details to strangers in pubs and showing their IG to strangers who ended up being friends of mine. Small city. I've tried to contact them about things that need to be sorted after our intertwining life. So I guess this is from someone who wants nothing more than a call or text, but genuinely doesn't know if they could answer and what that answer would be. Not at all related to the post, I realize. I'm pretty hammered right now and have no one to talk to about these things where I am now. So I'm screaming into the void, I guess. Story 20. Nothing like this, but I wish I could text my 7th grade boyfriend. I'm 18 now, and I know that sounds stupid, but he passed away in 9th grade. We were only together for 3 months, and he told me he loved me early in the relationship, as 13-year-olds do. I didn't quite feel that yet. I knew it took longer than that to form that feeling and bond, so I told him I wasn't ready to say it. We stayed together for a little longer, and it was awkward around him, which probably pushed him away. I tried to hang out with him when he invited me to a movie, but my dad said no. I started to finally form the feeling of love for him. I really did. I know it sounds stupid, but I think it was just love for him as a person. We broke up before I got to tell him. After that summer, when I went to 8th grade, he started teasing me and treating me like a friend, which I really appreciated. I wasn't into him anymore, but I did love him as a person and friend. Our friend groups mixed and we would all hang out at school. He passed away a few months after a virus started from an untreated tumor that completely took over. We barely started freshman year, and I got a text from my friend that said he passed away. Once I realized it was true, I went into shock and then cried. I called one of my best friends who was friends with him, and we cried and would call whenever we felt down about him to talk about him. The point of this is to say that I wish I got to text or call him one last time, explain everything that happened in 7th grade, and to tell him that I love him. I would say I'm sorry for the way I treated you in our little relationship. I know that it was barely anything, but you were so sweet to me, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to return the same effort back. I was scared and nervous and probably not into boys as I'm still figuring it all out. You would probably tease me so hard and try to pair me up with people. I wish, before our relationship ended, that I told you I loved you. I don't love you the same way, of course, but I still love you as a person and care about you. I enjoy being friends with you, and I appreciate how open of a person you were, and keeping me in your life despite our relationship ending. You were more mature and thoughtful than any other 13 to 14-year-old. And you taught me a lot about how to treat others in relationships. You taught me everything I knew up to 10th grade in terms of how to be treated and how to treat others. Thank you for being a friend and a good person. I wish I could have stayed in touch after 8th grade ended, like sending a text or something. I wish I did, especially as I feel as if maybe, just maybe, I would have found out about the condition you were in. I always wonder if you were experiencing that growth at school and kept quiet and covered it with your hoodie. Maybe if we asked you how you were doing more, maybe if word got around, maybe if your parents took you to a doctor before I was too late. I miss you, and I know you would have accomplished some insane things. You were smart like that. You would have graduated yesterday. You should have been able to do great things. Anyone out there, reach out to your loved ones. They may be going through something mentally or physically that they don't know how to express out loud. To the parents out there, rely on modern medicine. It's been studied and modified for so many years. Herbs won't fix everything, especially tumors. It's been studied and worked on so we don't have to lose people, especially kids, to things that could have been in control. You are their advocate. Tell your loved ones you're proud of them and love them. You never know what might happen. Story 21. I had a high school boyfriend. We started out fine, but after we broke up, it became kind of toxic. We just kind of loved and hated each other. So we would use each other. If I was ever single and he wanted to hook up, we would. Never even checked to see if he had a girlfriend because in my mind at the time, it didn't matter because I always assumed we would eventually end up married. This lasted up until after college graduation. It was the weirdest thing. Whenever I was seeing someone and said no, he would outright say he didn't care because eventually we would be together. Then I met my husband and something just clicked in me. I remember my ex texting me and I told him no because I was seeing someone and he told me it didn't matter. Because he was too and I'd been seeing the same girl for a while and even when we were together last. It was the first time he ever pushed back on me saying no to him. And I really don't think it was my no that scared him. I honestly feel like he was relieved I said no because I don't think he really wanted to be with me again. It was just a comfort thing for him. Anyways, it has been since then a no. The last I heard from him was when I announced being pregnant with my first. And again, whenever he contacted me, I don't think he really meant it. I think he was just testing the waters to see what would happen. He's married now to that same woman, and honestly, they look so in love and so happy. I am too. I'm glad we came to our senses and started saying no 13 years ago because, man, both our lives would have been so different. Story 22. Mine sent me a text through a mutual friend. She didn't have my cell. It was a text saying her father had passed away. And when she was cleaning out his desk, she found a small wood carving I'd started for her dad, along with a note I'd sent him. Carving was a weird hobby I had at the time, and her dad got a kick out of it. I sent him the unfinished carving and a note saying I probably was never going to finish it now that his daughter and I had split up and it was sort of symbolic of an unfinished relationship, but that I had huge respect for him and enjoyed my time with him. It wasn't meant as a guilt trip for her to eventually find or anything. I really did do it out of respect for him. He had treated me like a son. Anyways, as mentioned, she found it almost 24 years later and sent me that text via a mutual friend saying thank you for being a quality human being, and that it meant a lot to her. No further communication intended on her side, and I didn't respond either. And 20 years happily married. I thought it was a nice gesture among adults. Honestly, I'd forgotten I'd done that. It was in the hurt of the moment that I sent it. All good. Story 23. A specific ex of mine tries to pull this every now and then. When I had left her town for college, she had called me about a month into my first semester. Told me I already sounded different. I asked why he called me. He didn't say. We hung up after a short conversation and I never heard anything. Fast forward a few months, I got a random call from them. They were mad that I forgot their birthday after months of no contact. I explained that my current partner's birthday was actually on the same day and that's what I was celebrating. He hung up again. Didn't hear anything for years. Fast forward again, I'm out of college and I'm in my first job. I got a Facebook message. He told me he messed up his life. I believed it. I told him there was still hope. He's young and can bounce back. After that, I found myself blocked. Whatever. I think finally, after coming up on a decade of me never reaching out to them, they finally got it in their head that I don't really want anything to do with them. There is one thing I'm terrified about, though. This specific ex has told me that he would come and try to find me at 40, knock on my door and ask me to marry him. Why he didn't do that when we were just in a relationship, I have no clue. But for some reason, he had this idea of grandeur that at 40 I'll be single and we will be together again. However, I've since moved completely across the country, removed myself from all social media, have a new partner that looks like the one, and I'm getting my life in order. Story 24. Turned on my phone after a flight to a series of texts from an ex who had made a big deal about how much he liked me in the first weeks we were dating, telling me I should tell all my friends about her because obviously they'd be meeting her soon. It then made me agonize for a week while she suddenly decided between me and another guy before dropping me for him. Well, obviously that didn't work out for her, because these texts were telling me about how she had made a mistake with me, but didn't want to make it again, and had gotten herself caught between two guys and wanted me to decide for her, along with a description of both of them and why she liked each of them. I told her it was inappropriate to ask me that. She had to get herself out of the situation and that I wasn't about to doom one of these guys to the same dumping I got. I also suggested maybe she spend some time by herself to figure out what she really wants, so she stops hurting so many people. Her response? Oh, so you're like, not over it, huh? Needless to say, I haven't spoken to her since. Although I saw on Facebook she got married a few weeks before I did. So happy endings all around. Although I just have no interest in ever interacting with that person again. It was shocking how little consideration she had for these people she was dating.
It seemed kind of like she was looking for the most romantic story she could live and jumped from guy to guy chasing that feeling. Story 25. We caught up over text and talked about how our lives diverged since 10 years ago. It was actually funny. She sent me a screenshot of the Elder Scrolls Oblivion because we used to play while talking on the phone with each other. Through catching up, we learned about each other's lives since the breakup and our separate hardships. She actually got married and then divorced as the guy was cruel. I went through a period where I was depressed and I had a lot of family problems, and I went to grad school because I hate myself. Lol. We both pulled ourselves out of it separately and are now in relationships with people we had also met after getting through some of those hardships. I always wished I had handled the breakup better. I was a dumb kid. I honestly wish I had the perspective on life that I do now. And I'm also glad it ended because I'm happy with the person I became. I don't think I would have been able to grow as a person the way I did. From our conversation, it seems like she's happy too. Also, on the off chance you're reading this, Laura, either because I sent it or you remember my username, as of when I'm writing this, I still haven't played Elden Ring. I'll get it eventually, I promise. Story 26. About 15 years ago, when Facebook first was a thing, I got a crazy number of texts from women that I dated when I was single. You know, hey, I've been thinking about you. What are you up to? Uh-huh. I know what those are about. They were almost all from someone freshly divorced who wanted to test the waters. I'm sorry, but I love my wife. However, I had one devastating breakup when I was 20. We dated for a year and then, wham, she broke up with me over the phone. 30 years later, she reached out to me on Facebook. I told my wife about it. My wife says, well, if that breakup was always such a mystery, then talk to her. Well, it turns out her mother, who was a first-class shrew, made her break up with me. Literally sat in the bed while Carol called. Mystery was solved. The clouds lifted. And then we had a nice chit-chat about where our respective lives had led. But then she started in with why did we ever break up? You were so good to me. Plus details on how her marriage was going to hell. I put the kibosh on that right away. I love my wife for a million reasons. One of which is the fact that she's a steady presence in my life, not a neurotic drama queen. As I bid her goodbye, I remember thinking, thank God I'm not with her. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.